15th of March 2020, it was announced that theatres across the UK would need to close their doors immediately. In a mere matter of 24 hours, the theatre world was turned on its head. We had no idea that the doors would remain closed for so long, and that the effects of the pandemic would continue to haunt us 3 years down the line. I'm Sophia Cooper, and this is my documentary about the performing arts industry and the effects that the COVID pandemic has had on theatres, as well as the theatre industry as a whole. As a passionate performer, or as Gen Z would coin it, theatre kid, I want to shine a light on the importance of theatre, both through its mental health benefits, physical benefits, but also for its value to the economic growth of the UK. So, welcome to my documentary, Lights Back On. Despite what many people have been conditioned to believe, the British performing arts industry does not start and finish in the West End. There are many theatre companies up and down the UK that have been affected by the pandemic, from professional theatres all the way to amateur dramatic companies. Another part of the industry that has often been overlooked by many are the cruise ship performers and cast members whose lives were changed overnight by the pandemic. I decided to get in touch with Katie Quick, who is currently on her 4th contract with Carnival Cruise Lines, to find out a bit about her experiences since the pandemic hit.
I think the pandemic itself, with the closing of the industry, definitely had an impact on my mental health. There were days I felt hopeless and worthless, and as if everything I'd ever worked for had suddenly disappeared. I feel like it was a time for everyone to really appreciate how much joy the arts bring to our world, and gave those who view our job as not a real job a chance to realise just how significant entertainment is in our society. I had to return to working a bar and waitressing job, which I had done when I was 16 to 20 as a part-time job, and it really hurt my pride to have to return to an entry-level job after having worked and trained so hard to be working at the professional level I previously was. Coming back to work has been a blessing, and I'm so grateful to be performing again. However, the restrictions on board ships have made it more difficult than before. Our privileges have been reduced, meaning life on board is more arduous than before, though this may be different working in different theatres.
That feeling of loneliness and isolation Katie described really resonates with me. I myself am a member of Unexpected Places, and unfortunately, due to the way my school handled the lockdown, I couldn't join the classes. So I went from 3 classes a week to nothing in a mere matter of 24 hours. Rosie, what does creating the little family mean to you? Because it is a family at the end of the day.
I think that you are even asking me that just fills me with enormous pride and feeling of success, to be honest, because when I first wanted to create Light Up, it was really important to me that there was a sort of supportive, welcoming atmosphere that really kind of helped young people to express themselves and find their creativity and all those kinds of aspects that are related to drama, as well as like performing and being good actors. So the fact that you feel that way and ask me that question, it feels really good.
I'm glad. Light Up is definitely a family, and I'm more than happy to say this on the record. Light Up has become a home. It's become a safe space, and as I mentioned in the arts organisation, safe spaces are really hard to come by, especially for kids. In my generation, it sounds easy in theory, but it's really not. And I think Light Up and all these other drama organisations out there are so ridiculously special, and I'm so glad you obviously had funding from the government. So would you mind taking us a bit through that?
Yeah, of course. As you quite rightly said, Sophia, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the support that we received during the pandemic. We had a lot of funding from the Arts Council. They had several different funding pots that were available during the kind of lockdown periods. And also we wouldn't be here without the support of the people who are using our services as well. It was a really sad time for all of us too, to be kind of cut off from the students that we were working with. So to see them, whether it was through a weekly class or we had quiz nights online and lots of different things, to actually keep seeing people and having that connection in a difficult time was really important to all of us as well.
How can theatres and arts organisations continue to build and strengthen after COVID?
That's a very, very good question. I think now is a time where a lot of arts organisations are going to find things very difficult because all of the funding that I've just spoken about is now finished because the world is back to normal. But as we know, the world isn't quite back to normal yet. So just as an example, before the pandemic, Light Up worked with 400 young people a week. And at the moment, we're working with 200 young people a week. And so we're still at that stage where we're trying to rebuild the organisation. So we have to kind of look for other ways that we can sustain the services that we provide by thinking of things like other avenues of income, for example. So we are starting to hire out our building, as an example. We're trying to start a programme of immersive cinema events to have different avenues to kind of explore while everything's still kind of building back to where it was before the pandemic.
What exciting times lie ahead for Unexpected Places and Light Up. Theatre means so much to me and I wanted to see what it meant to other young people.
What does theatre mean to me? Well, theatre to me means an experience where, as the audience member, you watching the actor, you get a sense of the story in the same way that you don't get with film or TV, and the dynamic between the audience member and the actor is a dynamic you just don't get with those other forms of media.
What does theatre mean to me? Well, for me, theatre is all about enjoyment. If you're an audience member, then you get to watch these amazing people perform on stage and be transported into a whole new world. And if you're a cast member, you get to meet incredible people, form new friendships, and get the joy of finally performing in front of an audience. Theatre has the power to change people's lives, inspire them to try new things, just like it did for me.
So, what theatre means to me is it's a way of expressing certain thematic ideas and expressing what's important to you. That's why I feel like it's probably the main reason why I grew up really loving theatre, because it's a really good way of showing your viewpoints and what you believe in, and it gets it to a really wider audience, so it connects everyone in some ways.
What theatre means to me, it means connecting with an audience. It means watching something you've never seen before, connecting with the performers, experiencing new things. It means getting to know other people, and it's just enjoyment. And I don't know anyone who's come out of the theatre and not had a smile on their face and really enjoyed it. Even if it's not the best thing I've ever seen, they just enjoyed the whole experience, the feeling of being there, of watching something live. There's just nothing like it.
As a performer, theatre is so important to me as it is a form of expression and storytelling that is so ingrained into being a human being. If you think about it, oral storytelling such as theatre is the first way we pass down stories, legends and myths. To me, it is so important to perform, but also to watch and get lost in that story in a different way. I hope we never lose it again like we did during COVID, and now that the lights are back on, they stay on.
To me, theatre is about fun and entertainment. I've never been to a show before where I've not had the most fun. It's so good. And I also love the creativity and imagination that goes into creating something so amazing. And it always makes me wonder, who would have the brains to create something like this, because it's so good. It's also, the purpose of theatre is to bring joy to the people watching. And, it makes you happy, which is, the most important thing. So that's why I love it.
What does theatre mean to me? Theatre is an escape from my world. Theatre is an escape from all my problems. And when I'm on the stage, I feel confident. I feel confident in myself. And when I'm in the audience, I feel happiness on another level, because in shows and in theatre, there are happy endings. And theatre just means the world to me.
Well, wonderful answers to the question what theatre means to me. I'm here with Shanice Walker, and I think it's only fair that we start your interview off with what does theatre mean to you?
So theatre has been a big part of my life so far. I started dancing when I was 3 years old, and as time's gone on, theatre hasn't meant that much to me, but it's only because I've ventured out into being more of a dancer rather than the musical theatre side or theatre. But yeah, it's always been a part of me as a person.
Awesome. So Shanice, for everyone watching, is a graduate of the 2021 class. So what college and course did you take?
So I went to Performers College and I took the dance and musical theatre course for 3 years. So I did that for 3 years. Yeah.
Awesome. So what was the transition between normal in-person classes to online lessons like?
So the transition was a bit crazy. We went from being in the studio with everyone to dancing in our living rooms, or some people had studios in their houses or big spaces in their houses. For me, it was like I was dancing in my living room, but it was like a 1 meter box basically. So there wasn't much space for me to dance in. So other people could also see our living rooms and stuff, obviously, because it's on Zoom. So it was a bit daunting getting to see everyone that had like massive spaces and had loads of money, and then I was just there with my little 1 meter box space dancing, trying to do like contemporary or something like that. But yeah, it was crazy, but we got through it in the end.
You definitely need a lot more space for contemporary.
Yeah.
From what you've just explained, you're definitely not overselling the whole lockdown thing. You're definitely underselling it. That must be a lot of mental and physical pressure, especially for someone so young. Okay, so do you think having graduated during a pandemic has affected your chances of signing with an agency or securing work in the industry straight after graduation?
I think it has. For me personally, I was able to get an agent from my 3rd year show. That was only because one of our teachers invited one of his friends who just started up his agency. They invited him to come and he scouted me from that. So I was lucky in that sense. But like, if that didn't happen, then I don't think I'd have an agent right now. Like my best friend, so when we did our shows, there was DT3 show, and then we had another show that was DT3B show. Mm-hmm. So there was 2 shows, but they were 2 separate and different shows. My best friend was in the other one, and they didn't have any agents or anyone come watch them. They allowed parents to come, but there was no like industry people coming to watch them. So she actually doesn't have an agent still now. So it's proven to be like a lot harder for the students to get agents or to get back into the industry after they've left college, which is a bit annoying.
So it was literally a chance of luck for you to get an agent.
Yeah, it was luck.
Wow.
If I was in the other show, I don't think I would have got an agent from that. So
I know that the performing arts industry is 25% luck, but that is just unfair.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you currently working or have worked in the industry since graduation, and do you have any future plans?
So I have worked in the industry so far. I've done 2 jobs so far in the industry, but at the moment I'm trying to find another job doing dancing, but it's quite a long process. It's like auditions and then recalls, and then sometimes you get no's, sometimes you get yeses. So it's like a long process.
What jobs did you do, if you don't mind me asking?
So I danced for Dua Lipa at the Brit Awards last year.
Wow.
Yes, I did that, and then I did the Euros closing ceremony for the last game they did. So I danced in that. They had this massive ceremony before the match started. So I got to take part in that and dance in that, so it was quite fun.
What was the COVID restrictions like? Because obviously it was last year and they were tighter than what they are currently.
Yeah, so for the Euros, I had to wear a mask basically all of the time, which is kind of a bit annoying because it was probably towards the end of the pandemic, kind of, when it started to die down a bit. So the footballers, they weren't wearing masks, and loads of the people in the arena, they weren't wearing masks either, so I was a bit confused why the dancers had to wear masks. For the Brit Awards, we had to take lateral flow tests. So I think I took like 7 lateral flow tests within like 4 days.
Wow.
They just wanted to make sure we were definitely like safe and didn't have COVID. So, but yeah.
I reckon it's because it's an enclosed studio.
Yeah.
So, second to final question, do you think the government has done enough to support the performing arts industry during the pandemic?
I would say no. I don't think they support the industry without a pandemic, or if they had a pandemic anyway. I feel like there needs to be a lot more support from the government, money-wise, support just in general. And I feel like during the pandemic, they weren't supportive at all. There was like people that were losing their jobs because obviously theatres weren't allowed to open. And like they rely on those jobs, like they rely on like them to pay for their bills, their food, their rent, all of that stuff. I feel like they didn't really support college students either, like mentally, like money-wise, physically, all of that stuff as well. So I don't feel like there is much support from the government as of today anyway, yeah.
I think that's the same with a lot of people in this industry, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So what would have a normal year looked for you, final year? Obviously without the pandemic.
Yeah, so my final year would usually consist of auditioning for Move It. So that is like a dance convention where all the colleges like come together and they like showcase their college basically. I would have got to do that, but we weren't allowed to do that because Move It wasn't a thing. So that didn't happen. I would have had my parents come to my graduation, but they weren't allowed to attend because of the COVID situation. And then agents come into the agency as well. The show, the final show. That wasn't allowed to happen. There was quite a few other things, but that happened all last year, so it's a bit far away in my memory, but yeah.
To round off my line of interviews, I was lucky enough to talk to Holly Scott, who works at the Mayflower Theatre, and find out what it was like for the team at the Mayflower during COVID, and see how they are continuing to draw audiences back and put performances on after the pandemic.
What is it like working in a theatre during the pandemic?
So my experience was quite different because I'd only worked here for a few months when the pandemic had hit. So I worked at home for a few weeks, which was quite strange, never done that before. And then I was put onto furlough, which was again an even more peculiar time. And then my job role changed to what I am now. And then we went into sort of part-time furlough and part-time work. So this is when during the summer we were able to run sort of socially distanced activity. So we did sort of family workshops, tours of the theatre, but only for sort of a couple of people. And we did manage to have a bit of a heritage open day as well. So that was different to work through part-time. We then was able to have our youth theatre sessions on the stage of the Mayflower, which is completely unheard of because usually there's shows in, but obviously without the shows, we could bring back activities socially distanced and be on the stage. So that was quite a positive of the pandemic. And then we managed to acquire another theatre during the pandemic. So obviously we're at Mayflower now, but we also have masked Mayflower Studios. So I was seconded over to the other theatre, made as part of sort of an implementation team. So we were all set up there to create the theatre, bring it all back to life. So I worked there for about 6 months, very small team in the building and at home, and then sort of went on to coordinate some projects there as the theatre began to reopen. So my personal experience throughout the pandemic has been completely different probably to everyone, every individual's.
How have you been working as the Mayflower to bring audiences back?
So I spoke with our marketing team and our box office team because they were really at the pinnacle of creating that and as it changed. So when we were sent into the position when we have to have 50% audiences, we had sort of a hybrid system where we had sort of full capacity in the stalls and then socially distanced in the circle. So our theatre currently has 2,274 seats. So to almost completely half that, you can imagine what that was like with half the amount of ticket sales. Our sort of online systems, we tried to adjust so it would encourage people to book again. So certain things, when you'd book a seat, automatically the seat next to it wouldn't be online. So we tried lots of different things through campaigns as well.
We're quite fortunate that our building's quite a large and open space, so maybe people would feel a bit more comfortable because there's a bit of airflow. And we just tried all sorts of different things essentially to try and encourage people to come back. But the main thing was we were just happy to be open, even if it was to slightly less people.
Do you think people have felt anxious coming back into a theatre, whether that's audience, you yourself or cast?
I think so, and I think for audience definitely, because a lot of people that do come to the theatre, I mean especially our matinee performances are from an older or more sort of vulnerable generation, so it's definitely taken some time to boost confidence in that sense. A lot of our campaigns have tried to focus on photos and videos of people in the theatre and doing the things, so what the journey is when you had to come in and have your temperature checked, or what it's like to wear a mask in the theatre, the way the seats would look, how you get there, who's working there, so just trying to give everybody an insight. So that's something for the audience. For myself personally, it was quite a worry, and especially because we work with participants. My job is all about working with people, so suddenly when you're not able to do that and then you're put back in a situation where you can, it was a bit touch and go. So it was definitely took some time to build that confidence for our audience, for staff as well, but we've managed to retain a lot of staff, which is really, really good. Our audiences and also our participants that take place in our activity. So we're still going with our youth theatres and things, so glad of that.
So do you think the government has done enough to support the arts?
So we were quite fortunate to receive a grant from the Cultural Recovery Fund. So we actually received £3 million. So that was given to us over a period of time. And that helped for us to retain staff, to keep the theatre running, because it costs a lot of money to run the theatre even when a show's not happening, and also to pay for furlough for it. So in that sense, we were really, really thankful for the government to be able to source that for us. I think where we found it challenging,
with the sheer amount of shows that the Mayflower sees annually, how was that trying to reschedule everything and letting people know and stuff?
So I'm thankful that wasn't part of my role, but I know it was incredibly difficult. So to sort of put it into perspective, every time a show is moved, it doesn't just affect our theatre, but it affects other shows and other theatres, because obviously everything works on a sort of tour track. So if you've got a musical that's going to all these different locations and different venues and you move it once at one, that has a knock-on effect to everything. So it's sort of a real mammoth task to take on. And our programme of work, that's sort of put in and organised years in advance. So then to be, again, kind of having to make those changes as and when was quite difficult. Then to also inform all of the customers, obviously thousands of people that have paid for tickets. We did try and encourage people to use gift vouchers and keep it on sort of on our system, so they would then use it to pay back to another show. So quite a lot of people did that, which was good, but also all the marketing campaigns and our What Song guides became sort of all a mismatch of things that were happening or changed. So incredibly difficult, but also, people have shown all the incredible things they can do in their work, and we still managed to make it happen. So that's a positive.
I definitely think that despite the pandemic being horrible, it has invited that new audience.
Yeah, I agree.
Sort of seen like new faces and things.
From my personal experience, I do think that because of the pandemic, people are now wanting to do more or say yes to things when they might have said, I'm not interested in opera, or I don't want to see that musical tonight after work, but actually they might be more keen to say yes now, having had 2 years of not being able to do anything. So I would hope that maybe more people are interested in putting themselves out there a bit more and taking the opportunities we offer.
Did you know that the theatre industry brings in £2.7 billion annually to the UK economy? Contrast that with the fact that live sporting events contribute £1.1 billion, and it's easy to see why theatres are worth the investment and government action to help save them, and theatre groups across the country. The theatre sector employs 290,000 people in the UK alone, which shows how many people's jobs and lives were on hold during the pandemic. This also goes to show how important theatre is for the UK. It's been reported by the Society of London Theatres that over £34 million people visit our theatres every year. The pandemic hit us hard as a community, but we will be ever resilient, ever strong, and will continue to build back in a positive direction. To sign off this documentary, I think it's quite fitting to leave you with a quote by Laurence Olivier: "Without acting, I cannot breathe."